I've been representing people in housing crisis situations for the last 14 years. And what I'm talking about are people who have fallen into foreclosure, who have defaulted on their mortgages, who cannot pay their mortgages, and who are desperate for some sort of assistance or some way to save their homes. Now, what I've seen from people and what I've learned from all of these years of representing people, that one of the things that people are most terrified of is filling out the forms that the bank gives you to do a loan modification. What I call this is form fear. Form fear, honestly, could probably account for about 25 to 30% of all the housing related problems that people have. People are terrified and dread filling out the forms that are necessary to get a loan modification. I'm going to explain right now the different options that you have, and sometimes you might even have the opportunity to apply for loan modification without filling out any forms in about 30 seconds. I started representing people in 2008 who were in bankruptcy situations or had loan modification problems or had homes in foreclosure or other debt-related problems. In those 14 years that I've been representing people, what I've seen is that people have an absolute dread of filling out forms. And I don't know if this is some sort of psychological thing. I am not a psychologist. I am not a doctor. However, I know that people who are faced with filling out an application that's extremely important, like a loan modification application, sometimes shut down and can't do it. That is nothing to be ashamed of because it's pretty common. I've seen it over and over and over. And unfortunately, a lot of times this is the reason that people end up losing their homes, because they cannot get themselves to the place where they're filling out the right forms and doing it properly so that the bank can possibly, or the government can possibly give you assistance that will end up with you saving your home. Now, right now, a lot of banks are offering two types of loan modifications, and I'm going to group them into two groups: streamlined and non-streamlined. Streamlined loan modifications for those folks who are afraid of filling out forms. The good news is that these are no doc, no application, basically loan modifications that just appear in the mail and say, here you go, here's your loan modification, don't worry about the late payments, we're going to take care of it. The non-streamlined or traditional loan modifications, the stuff that we saw before the pandemic, are the ones that people are terrified of. But I'm going to explain to you that in many cases you might want to do the non-streamlined traditional loan modification. Now, we're going to talk about what a streamlined loan modification is. Now, a lot of folks have already gotten these things in the mail. And if you already accepted it, well, then there you go. You already accepted it. Now, the issue that you have to understand with Streamline, and the big thing with Streamline loan modification, is that they are not related to your income, because the bank does not know your income. The bank has no idea what it is that you make right now. All they do is look at the debt and they kind of do a calculation based on a mathematical formula that they have, and they say this person can pay X amount and therefore here it is, here's your loan modification. Now, that's a good thing because you don't have to do anything. You just wake up in the morning, you've been stressing about not having to pay your mortgage, and then all of a sudden a loan modification appears in the mail and hey, you're good to go. Now, like I said, this is not based on income. So it's not a assistance program in the sense where you are being treated as an individual and you're being told, okay, well, you can, we're going to look at your income and we're going to try to get you a payment that you can afford. Now, what happens in these situations and what I've seen, now this is not in every case, and I'm not telling you to turn down streamlined loan modifications. I'm just explaining to you what it is that you might be getting in the mail. these streamlined loan modifications usually end up with a higher payment for the homeowner. Why is that? Because the bank is looking at the mortgage as a whole, and all they're doing is either extending the years and they're manipulating the interest rate. The problem is interest rates have gone up. So right now, it's very possible that you're gonna get a higher interest rate than you had when you initially got the mortgage, especially if you bought the mortgage in the last few years. If you bought the house in the last few years. When you do a loan modification, it's very possible that the new loan modification will have a higher interest rate, which could result in a higher payment. The good thing about these streamlines, it is automatically gets you out of the foreclosure situation that you were in and gets you paying on your mortgage again. The bad news is that the payment, most of the time, is higher. Now, the non-streamlined traditional loan modifications, what I call, are a full application and full documentation loan modification. Now, these loan modifications are based not solely, but your income is a factor when they are looking at whether or not to give you a loan modification. These loan modifications are based many times between 31 and 50% of your gross income. Your gross income is not what you take home, it is what your boss pays you or what you make in your business every month. This gross income amount many times is whatever it is, you divide it by, or you multiply by 0.31 or 0.50, and that is your range. That is the payment that these people are going to try to give you. If this is a better deal for you, then you can try to apply for one of these. Even if you get a streamline, you can ask for them to look at your income. If you think that you can get a better deal from one of these traditional non-streamlined loan modifications, it's worth a shot. Now, I want you to look at this at the bottom, and I want you to be very clear. You can be denied for a non-streamlined traditional loan modification. It is possible to go through the application process and be denied because your income is insufficient or some other factor. Understand that a streamlined loan modification, there's no denial. You have accepted it basically, or you've been approved because the bank says this is what we have to do. A non-streamlined full application loan modification is an application which could result in a denial. So understand what you're doing because a lot of people don't get it. They think that they're a guaranteed loan modification and you are not guaranteed loan modification if you are applying. Now, let's get back to what I was talking about with the fear of forms. And I'm gonna give you some tips on how to get around this and how to deal with this, because if you're going to be applying for loan modification, then you need to do this properly. And I'm going to teach you just a few tips to how to get to the point where you're going to be applying for your loan modification and possibly getting something good from this process.
Become a better man, sinking in the sin. Oh. We don't need the past in our lives for tomorrow.
Okay. So you've received, usually in the mail, a loan modification package, which is super scary because it has a lot of pages, a lot of things to fill in, and a lot of excess pages which give you the instructions on what to do. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, don't panic, because a lot of people have applied for these and a lot of people have gotten it. And I'm gonna teach you how to do that, especially on how to handle this emotionally. Now, in order to properly fill out any kind of application, you have to pick a date in the future when you're actually going to sit down and do the application. This is really important because you can't just grab that application on a Monday and sit. Most people, some people I guess can do this, but most people can't just sit down and start banging out the application. Most people need some buildup. So what I would do if I was you in your situation, I would pick a date, maybe 10 days, 14 days in the future. Give yourself some time because you're gonna have to collect documents. And the document collection time is very important. So you're gonna pick a date and you're gonna build up to that date. So what I mean by this is you're probably gonna have to produce taxes, bank statements, and some other things, and you're gonna have to send it over. Start getting those things together. If you if they're in PDF form, which they probably are, download them from the bank. Do this on a Monday. do it on a Tuesday. If your application date is 10 days in the future, build up to it. Now, one thing I didn't mention about the application date, which I think is extremely important. When you are picking your date that you're going to sit down and do the application, you need to be realistic about your time. You need to pick a date that basically you're not going to be distracted for about 3 to 4 hours. I don't think it takes that long to do this, but the time before and the time after is really important. So do not do this 2 hours before your son's birthday party, or an hour before you start your vacation, or 2 hours before somebody's coming from out of town to visit and you're stressed. No. Pick a date and time when you have nothing to do after, if you can, or that if you have stuff to do, which we all do, that you have some buffer. Give yourself the time necessary to focus on this project. It is extremely important that you do not rush through this, because if you rush through that, you will be denied, okay? Because you're gonna make mistakes. So what we're gonna do, again, is we're gonna pick our date, and you're going to gather documents as you're building up to the date. The third thing here is you need to be sure that you fill out the application exactly how they want it. They are not going to fill out anything for you. They are not going to guess. They are not going to assume that you meant one thing when you put something, or if you leave something blank, they are not going to assume a number. They do not know what you used when you applied for the mortgage. This is not the same thing. They do not have some repository of information about you that they're going to look at. All they're going to look at is the thing you're going to send them. That you're sending them. If you do not put the accurate information in the application, you're going to get a denial, or you're going to get a loan modification that honestly is too high. So be sure that you fill it out accurately, and do not assume that they have any other secret information, or that they run some sort of background check, or that that's some sort of credit check, or something that they're going to use in place of what you put. That is not true. All they're going to use is the stuff that you give them. The last thing, and this is, I don't know if you can see this here, but it says be ready to reapply. I'm going to give you the dirty little secret about loan modifications. Most people get denied the first time. It is a fact of life. It is unlikely that you're going to get the loan modification the first time you apply. Why? Because you're not a professional. You only do this once. You've only done this once or twice maybe, but you are not a professional. You are not somebody that fills out these forms and knows what they want. So you're going to probably be denied. That doesn't mean you're always going to be denied, but be ready for the denial, because the trick in loan modification is the reapplication. The reapplication is where the money is. The reapplication is the secret. When you reapply is when you probably are going to get it, because now the bank's going to tell you what's wrong with your application. You're denied because of low income. There's things you can do. You're denied because you forgot to send a paper. Well, there you go. Now the next time you apply, you're going to fill in the form properly, and you're going to send the paper that they want. That is how you have to look at this. This is not a one and done process. It causes extreme stress for people. That's why people pay other people to do this. I understand it. But my channel here is about you doing it for yourself. It is very possible for you to do it for yourself, especially if you take into account all these things that I'm talking about here in this episode of Motivational Esquire. So good luck with your application. I hope to hear a lot of good feedback about how this stuff helped you get a loan modification and save your home.